Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to skip past the basics of business strategy and jump right into the deep end of environmental scanning. Specifically, we're really going to unpack the outsized role that political forces play within the larger PESTLE framework and, how they ultimately shape global business strategy. To kick things off, I want you to think of a modern organization kind of like a wild animal. Seriously, it has to be constantly aware of its surroundings, always scanning the horizon for predators, which in our world are strategic threats, and hunting for its next meal, or our opportunities. Because, well, if you stop scanning, you just become prey.
And that core survival instinct? That's environmental scanning. You already know it's about monitoring and evaluating internal and external info. But strategically, it's literally your ultimate early warning system. It buys your leadership teams the absolutely crucial lead time they need to pivot before a macro-level shock hits the organization.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a macro view of scanning the business environment, touch on the PESTLE framework, and then take a real deep dive into political factors, their specific elements, and finally, how to actually adapt to political shifts. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Scanning the business environment, focusing on the macro view.
Now, strategic planning doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It sits right at the center of this massive tug of war. On one side, you've got the internal dynamics that you can actually control, like your company culture or your assets. But on the other side, there's this huge web of external macro-environmental forces, things like the economy, the climate, and of course politics, just constantly pulling the strings from the outside.
Moving on to Section 2, the PESTLE framework, or as I like to call it, structuring the chaos. To actually make sense of all that external chaos, strategists bucket the environment into 6 key dimensions: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. But here's the really critical context to keep in mind. These aren't just isolated silos. Actually, the political dimension often acts like the first domino that knocks over the rest. I mean, politics drive economic trends, they shape our legal boundaries, and they dictate environmental regulations. Which brings us to Section 3, a deep dive into those political factors, the P in PESTLE. When we isolate that P, we're primarily looking at the raw influence that national institutions exert over business development. We're tracking the actions of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Basically, it's all about measuring the exact temperature of government intervention in the economy and the underlying stability of the political structure itself. All right, Section 4, the specific elements of political environments and exactly what you need to be watching. The political umbrella is just massive. I mean, yes, it covers concrete realities like corporate taxation and newly passed legislation, but strategically speaking, even just the shadow of a future trade dispute or the rhetorical buildup to an election cycle, that stuff can dramatically alter a company's outlook long before a single law is actually signed. Now, it's pretty easy to blur the lines between these PESTLE categories. Just remember where the boundaries are. National government actions, like shifting ideology or new regulations, those are strictly political factors. The stock market, on the other hand, even when it's reacting directly to political news, it falls firmly under the economic umbrella, simply because it represents expressly financial forces. And that exact same boundary applies to international agreements. While a treaty like NAFTA obviously involves politicians, from a pure scanning perspective, it's primarily classified as an international economic or legal affiliation. It's designed to improve trade, making it an economic driver rather than a pure macro-political factor like domestic policy. Let's move into our final section, Section 5, adapting to political shifts with real-world strategy. So here is the million-dollar question, right? How do abstract concepts like government ideology and fiscal policy actually manifest in on-the-ground corporate strategy? Because this isn't just theory anymore. It literally dictates survival. Let's look at a direct case study. Imagine a jurisdiction suddenly implements a higher corporate tax policy. A multinational company's early warning system flags this PESTLE threat. Leadership evaluates the data, actively shutters several of their existing facilities, and then physically relocates their operations to a completely different region, one that offers lower taxes and maybe state grants. Now that is political scanning driving a massive operational pivot. What this means is that businesses have to be incredibly agile during leadership changes and election cycles. As strategists, our job is to impartially adjust to new policies, We have to sit back and analyze how a shift from one political party to another can radically alter legal risk and economic alignment, leaving our own personal politics entirely at the door. And because the 24/7 political news cycle is just absolutely relentless, discipline is going to be your best defense here. Organizations have to strictly weigh the probability of a political event happening against the raw intensity of its potential impact. By isolating those critical, high-priority issues, you avoid falling into the trap of paralysis by analysis caused by absolute information overload. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. How might an upcoming election or even a quiet regulatory change be rewriting your industry's future right now? The political dimension of PESTLE is quietly operating in the background of your business every single day. The wild animal is out there. Make sure you're scanning the horizon. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.